This is undoubtedly the fastest fall off we've ever seen in college football. This player went from the #1 running back in the nation to Power 5 schools not even wanting him a year later. Colorado football, well before the days of Coach Prime, they were an extremely average team in the mid-2000s. But in 2008, they were supposed to meet their savior, a player that was going to bring them to glory in the Big 12 Conference. He was called by many the next LaDainian Tomlinson, the #1 running back in the nation, Darrell Scott. But unfortunately, he didn't save the program, and just a few years later, he disappeared from football forever. So what went wrong? This is the story of Darrell Scott. If you don't know who I am, I'm Saturday Shenanigans, and I post amazing college football content all off season long. Feel free to subscribe so you never miss out on another upload. Scott had a very busy childhood. Born in Tallahassee, Florida, the home of Florida State University in 1989, he was raised by his mother and stepfather, but spent stints in grade school and middle school living with other family members in Texas. From a young age, he was a special athlete, and everyone around him knew that big things were destined for high school ball. But instead of playing in Florida, his family moved to Ventura County, California, where he enrolled in Moorpark High School in 2004. What he did in his freshman season is unknown, as he played junior varsity and rode the bench on the varsity squad. But 2005 is where the legend of Darrell Scott would begin. He put up 1,988 yards on the ground on 292 carries with 19 touchdowns. In a September game against Ventura, he put up 256 yards with 3 scores. He helped lead his team all the way to a section championship. The offseason before his junior year is where Scott made the biggest leap of his career. He bulked up and got much stronger, going from 175 to 190 pounds of pure muscle on his 6-foot frame. He had everything at the running back position: the speed, the power, explosiveness, and vision. He was on the verge of breaking out. Scott and his uncle, Josh Smith, were destined to lead this Moorpark team to a chip. And that wasn't a mistake by me. He actually was a year younger than his uncle. 2006 is where he put his name on national recruiting boards. He finished the season with over 3,000 yards rushing, 45 touchdowns on 9.5 yards per carry. He was averaging near a first down on every single rush. But unfortunately, his team lost again in the section championship. Selfishly, it didn't matter though, because according to Rivals and ESPN, Scott was a 5-star recruit and the #1 running back in the nation for the class of 2008. He had offers to over 70 Division I schools, which he ultimately shaved down to just Texas, Florida, Colorado, and LSU as the landing spots. But he also was going through a different type of recruiting for high school, as he planned to leave Moorpark prior to the 2007 football season. Schools all over the state threw their best pitch to land him, which caused controversy in the area, since technically high schools aren't allowed to recruit players like a college would. Nevertheless, it was official that he'd play his senior season at St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure was a much better team, meaning they didn't have to fully rely on Scott's running ability like Moorpark did. His numbers declined: 2,433 yards rushing and 34 touchdowns, but Scott got what he wanted: a CIF Southern Section title, plus he was an All-American. Going into 2008, he was still the top running back recruit, so why in the world would he commit to Colorado? As I mentioned at the top of the video, the Buffs were not a great team during this time. Under head coach Dan Hawkins, they went 2-10 in 2006 and 6-7 in 2007. Clearly not a power in the Big 12 Conference. But if you look closer, the reason for commitment is actually pretty obvious. I mentioned Darrell's uncle Josh a few minutes ago. Josh was already playing for the Buffs, so that clearly had an influence on Darrell's decision. He was named to the preseason 2008 All Big 12 second team, which is a pretty tall task for a freshman. Unfortunately, he didn't make the immediate impact that everyone was hoping for from a 5-star running back. He appeared in 11 games, rushing for 343 yards on 3.9 yards per carry in 87 attempts, which is nothing special, and he only racked up a single touchdown. Colorado went 5-7 and missed out on a bowl game, but it was nowhere near over for Scott. Not everyone can dominate in their freshman season, and that is totally okay. He still had tons of time to develop. On the outside looking in, it was easy to assume that he'd play a much bigger role for the Buffs in 2009, But to everyone's surprise, he did not. After getting 1 carry in the season opener, he told the press that he wanted more, which is a big no-no in college football. Things like that can affect relationships with teammates and the coaching staff. Through 5 games on that season, with a measly 23 total carries and no touchdowns, Scott had enough. On November 3rd of 2009, he announced that he was transferring to UCLA and quit on the team mid-season. His uncle Josh had already transferred to Westwood before the season started. But things got even juicier. According to sources at UCLA, the Bruins did not even want him on their roster. They were satisfied with the running back talent that they already had. This must have been extremely humbling for Scott. Just a year removed from being the top recruit at your position to a conference foe not even wanting you. And it was for fair reason. He obviously wasn't showing the staff at Colorado what they needed to see during practice, and that's why he wasn't getting PT. Whether it was because attitude and effort, undisclosed injuries, or purely not being good enough, we will never fully know. But the speed of his fall off was almost unheard of, but he still had a shot at keeping his career alive. During June of 2010, Darrell Scott finally found a new home with the South Florida Bulls from the Big East Conference. These were the days of the old transfer rules, meaning Scott had to sit out an entire season before playing. During 2010, he worked tirelessly at his game, trying to get back that sauce he had in high school before finally appearing for the Bulls in 2011. He had a decent season, starting in 8 games with 814 yards and 5 touchdowns, and was actually named to the second team All-Big East. But there was one glaring issue. Scott was dealing with injuries that were never officially stated. Over the course of the 2011 season, he gained weight, and not the good kind of weight. He was 230 pounds. It was clear that Scott was much slower and less explosive than his old self, so it was shocking to everyone when he decided to forego his senior college season and enter the NFL draft. Everyone knew this wasn't the same guy who was 5 stars rated #1 in the country. The media and scouts weren't high on him, as they projected him to go undrafted, and he solidified this with a terrible NFL Combine performance, running a 4.69 40-yard dash. Luckily, the Cowboys decided to give him a shot and sign him as a free agent. He was on the roster for the 2012 season, not playing a single snap, but after the year ended, Scott was cut, only to never be seen in professional football again. The player that had so much promise was retired just 4 years after being seen as the best at his position. The story of Darrell Scott is truly sad. This is what happens to a player when they sustain injuries, lose confidence, speak out about coaching, and more. Darrell definitely could have used 1 more year in college at USF to develop, but we can't judge because we have no clue what his family was going through. Maybe he needed to make that sacrifice to try to make more money. Remember, these were before the days of NIL. But at the end of the day, this may have been one of the fastest fall-off busts in college football history. That's all I got, guys. That was a super fun video to make. I'm excited to see the response from this. I like doing bust videos, so if these continue to do well, I'm going to do more. I'm going to do guys that are deep in your memory bank that you forgot about. I'm going to bring them back to life. If you made it this far, smash that like button. Go comment your thoughts. Get this video out in the algorithm to reach as many college football fans as possible. I've been Saturday Shenanigans, your home for unfiltered college football content. I'll see you guys soon. Boom. I'm done. I'm walking off. I'm walking off, bro.